Michael, first of all, just a brief sort of look back at Boxing Day, and I imagine a degree of frustration when you reflect on things, whilst maybe not the cutting edge you'd really have wanted, and I know you've worked on it and we'll talk about that in a second, just the way the game ended.
Yeah, it was tough to take, I think, because obviously I was this situation with Danny and being sent off, and then I thought the 10 men out there for 19 minutes or whatever it was worked really hard, and I thought, a couple more minutes we could see it out. So I think in the end I'm really upset, I don't know if he's right, but upset for the lads that worked their socks off to try and get something out of those games. And Bolton are up there, a big team with big resources. They've been building for 4 years to try and get into this position. So you can't underestimate how good Bolton are. But then when you get that close to the end point, I think a point in the situation would have been a very, very good point for us. And so I think we're all disappointed, but we've got to dust ourselves down and go again, which is the beauty of this league, really.
I thought one of the things about Bolton that stood out to me, obviously a very good team, but you've talked about being sort of street smart a little bit. And I think of all the teams I've seen, apart from possibly Stevenage, they're really street smart. They know how to do the stuff that you don't necessarily see in a coaching manual. Yeah,
they were good. Santos at the back, like before even our number 9s like Jovan could run in the channels, he'd bop him off so he couldn't even get in behind. So there was lots of things going on in that game, like you say, which is just experience and the street smart. And they have their way of playing, which can hurt you with Charles down the sides and the 2 9s running in. So they were very good, and they dominate teams in the first 15. They pin teams back a lot. And I thought we dealt with that well, and I thought we managed that well. And I thought actually in the second half when we came out, we started to get a grip of the game a little bit more. We made a couple of changes and tweaks to the tactics again, and I thought we started to get a grip of it and actually looked like we could go and get something at the other end. But then the game changes on a situation, really.
I don't want to talk individually about Danny Mandroy, but you imagine a lot of Lincoln fans have been since. I just wonder if what it underlined, and you've talked about this as well in general terms, about the importance of discipline when we went away to Wigan and the discipline of a performance. Is that part of that you want from players, a discipline to what they do?
Yeah, I think it's discipline to stay on task when it gets hard is probably what wins you games. You can have a plan, and players need to stay on task not when it's easy but when it's hard as well. And that's the sort of discipline we're talking about, and I think in that situation, it was, for me, it was a game-changing moment. But like you said, the 10 players that are out there were great and could have got us a point.
Ethan Hamilton had an interesting position for you in the game against Bolton. It almost like, I know he's not a 9, but it was almost like a false 9. He seemed to be playing between that sort of midfield and attack. Obviously, Santos is going to be a really difficult physical test for him. Is that something you're going to continue with for a couple more games until you can maybe change in the window?
Yeah, try and get Ethan a little bit higher, because we know he's got a rocket and a finish, and got a strike, and he carries the ball well, he runs in behind well. So use his energy a little bit higher to make it harder for them, but also get him a little bit higher up the pitch. As more like an 8-10 type player, and he took that role on one, and I thought again he worked his socks off in there. But also, can we get more out of him going the other way, which is the bit that we're trying to do.
Inevitably, between now and the February the 1st, I get asked about the transfer window. It's kind of the rule. I just wonder, in a broad sense, how difficult the balance is, because you clearly need help in terms of some attacking options. Everyone can see the players that you're without, but you also don't want to be signing a player that come October next year is not part of the long-term plan. There's a difficult balance between the short-term need and the medium and long-term need.
Yeah, I think that's what we've got to get right. I think it's there's lots of players out there in the market that you can get in January, but they're not necessarily the good footballers you want, and there'll be reasons why they're there. But then there's other options we could do, and we're speaking to players at the moment who we think are right for now, but also doesn't compromise our long-term plan. And I think it's really important to have one eye on the long-term plan and one eye on what we need now. And I think that's getting that balance is really key. But whoever we're speaking to, there's 5 or 6 clubs in this league with more resources than we have, who are speaking to him as well. So it's not going to be an easy task. It's my first window with Lincoln. And like you say, I think it's getting someone or people in we need for now that we think are going to have an impact on trying to make us better in the short term, but definitely not compromise the long-term direction that we want to go, or compromise what we're trying to build really here for the future.
And in terms of sort of players that could come in, Freddie inevitably becomes another person that's been talked about a lot about the supporter base of late. I appreciate that obviously Jez is involved in the decision, the board are, but from your point of view and the immediacy, is it something you would like to see Freddie back at the club?
Yeah, well, we've been speaking to Walsall. I've been speaking to Walsall. The club's been speaking to Walsall. He's scored 10 goals in League Two. that could be one of the options. And we're speaking to them all the time, and I like Freddie. I've spoke to Freddie myself. I like what he's about, and I think it can add to us. So yeah, I think you're probably going to see Freddie maybe come back into the building if we think it's completely right. But there's jigsaw puzzles going on behind the scenes that I don't want to speak about. But it might be that we be able to get somebody else in, or it might be not, and then Freddie needs to come back to us. So it's the jigsaw puzzle with Freddie. But we're in full communication with Walsall as well about that.
And obviously, people always talk about the ins, don't they? But inevitably, in this sort of window, there have to be the outs as well.
I think that's the part of the jigsaw as well, isn't it? It's part of, like, with the club of our size and the resources we have, we're not a Chelsea that can just go and throw money into a transfer window. We have to make sure that we, move people in the right way, and again, not compromising our long-term plan. But if we need to bring somebody in the building, we need to help somebody get some minutes somewhere else.
And just one final one on the transfers. Does the fact that you play on the first, and then, of course, you'd love to have an FA Cup game, but you haven't got one. You've almost got that break. Do you think that will help in terms of trying to restructure the squad if you need to in the early part of Jan?
Yeah, I think so. I think I spoke to you off camera. I've been in for 24 sessions, and 2 of them have just been, if you like, my tactical way of playing. The rest have been match prep or recovery. But when we hit Jan without a game, it'd be good because I'll have a week with the players it'll feel like Christmas, I think, coming a bit late, where I can have a week with the players where I can do some real work with them. So having any new signings in the building at that point will be important.
And is that, and also the issues we talked about in terms of the shortage of bodies, have you found that quite frustrating? Because you know where you want to get to, I'm sure, as a head coach, and you've been quite pragmatic in talking about formations and players now, but games are coming so thick and fast that you can't really make as much progress in that direction as you want.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me at the moment as the head coach of the team is I definitely have an idea of how I want us to play, and it's probably not coming across at the minute in the games that we're seeing. In the moments you might see it, but I have to be pragmatic in the sense of being able to change that. And I think that's why I said when I came in, it's evolution, not revolution, because we still need to pick up points. We still need to be hard to beat. And how do you do that at the minute with, like injuries in the squad and relying on young players when we needed more depth to what we're doing? So yeah, I think you're 100% right. Like, it's not, the identity is not quite what I want, or is not what I want, if I'm honest. But I know that that's going to take time. The club know that's going to take time. Whilst we're building towards something in the future, we need to look after the here and now with the games. So being a bit more pragmatic and sitting in and being, if you like, a little bit lower isn't a bad thing. It just means that we can't move the group on as fast as we want because it's thick and fast with games and not much training behind the scenes.
And whilst you can be frustrated, and fans can be frustrated with all those little things that we've discussed in the last few minutes, you still look at the league table and you're still 9th. Yeah,
I think then that's the job, isn't it? That's the hardest part of the job, is to, in coaching and in learning and in development of the team, like, how do you move them on without going backwards, and how do you not compromise where you are at the minute? And we're still in the league table, we're still 9th, and we've still got to keep in touching distance. I think we go through a really tough period now with Derby, Peterborough, Wickham, Blackpool. If we're still in touching distance by the end of February, I think we could have a real chance. I think we could have a real chance to sneak into the playoffs, which we want to do. But again, we don't want to do that at the detriment of the long term of this club, with the resources that are available to us and thinking of the future.
Northampton Town, I appreciate you weren't here, but it was a painful result for Lincoln City fans who were there, conceding 2 goals late on. So they might feel like they owe them one, but Northampton, a club certainly on a decent run again, aren't they?
Yeah, it feels like we're meeting everybody on decent runs at the moment. It just feels like that, but that's football, isn't it? I think they're, I went to watch them play last Saturday actually, because we had the Saturday off, and they played Oxford, and they beat Oxford again last minute, and they're a very resilient team. John Brady gets his players into second balls. If you let them settle, they're really good on the ball. And they're in a good run up until the weekend against Stevenage. They're in a good run. They've won 4 out of the last 5 before that. And, we've got to be on the front foot. We're at home. We've got to take the game to them. But also they can hurt you. So we have to be careful about what the qualities they have up front. So hopefully, they're just below us in the league. So they want to take over us in the league as well. So I think it's another tough game. But, I think it's just another opportunity to show what we can do. And if they have the same resilience they showed with the 10 men, I think we'll be absolutely fine.